Dillon Gabriel vanished, and the Cleveland Browns don't want you asking why. One week, he's in the headlines as the questionable starting QB at the center of one of the most bizarre roster decisions in the NFL. The next, gone, no interviews, no sideline presence, no social media, just radio silence like he stepped into the witness protection program. And here's the part that has people speculating. Right before Dillon disappeared, his girlfriend went viral, posting a no-holds-barred takedown of the Browns organization that exposed dysfunction, favoritism, and what may be the most embarrassing QB controversy the team has faced in years. She aired it all out online, and just days later, Dillon was erased from public view. Coincidence or cover-up? Because now reports claim he's injured, but he hasn't played, he hasn't practiced, he hasn't been visible at all. The Browns are refusing to give specifics, and the timing couldn't be more suspicious. This isn't just about a benched quarterback. This is about a head coach accused of playing favorites, a media insider spinning narratives on his behalf, and an NFL owner possibly stepping in to silence a scandal that went viral on TikTok. But to understand how it all spiraled out of control, we've got to go back to the moment this QB controversy began, because that's where the cracks started to show. The Cleveland Browns knew exactly what they were doing, or at least they thought they did. When they stepped up to the podium during this year's draft, nobody expected them to walk away with two quarterbacks. That's right, not just one potential face of the franchise, but two in the same draft class. Shedeur Sanders, the high-profile, hyper-analyzed son of NFL legend Dillon Sanders, and Dillon Gabriel, the Oklahoma standout with mixed scouting reports and a scrappy reputation. Drafting both sent shockwaves through the league and confusion through every front office. Why would any team, let alone the Browns, stack their QB room with two rookie passers knowing full well that only one could lead the offense? There was no clear long-term plan, no developed strategy, just chaos. And for a franchise known for quarterback instability, this felt like another desperate roll of the dice. Inside team circles, speculation started right away. Who was the real pick? Who did ownership want? Who did the coaching staff believe in? And more importantly, why was there such an immediate separation in how they were treated? It didn't take long before those questions had answers. Kevin Stfansky, the Browns' now embattled head coach, wasted no time putting his cards on the table. It became obvious very quickly that he had a personal favorite. And every move he made from that point on confirmed it. Dillon Gabriel wasn't just a quarterback, he was Stfansky's quarterback. From the first week of minicamp, Gabriel was getting the lion's share of first-team reps. In closed practices, he ran the most snaps with the starters. In press conferences, the coach never missed an opportunity to praise his poise, his intangibles, or his grasp of the playbook. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, despite being the more polished, more NFL-ready prospect according to almost every analyst, was pushed down the depth chart inexplicably. He was given backup reps, backup responsibilities, backup treatment, and when the season began, backup failure. Insiders began whispering about strange occurrences, incorrect play cards handed to Shedeur during live game packages, play calls that didn't match what was practiced, and a pattern of treatment that made one thing painfully clear: this wasn't an open competition. It was a coronation. Dillon Gabriel was being handed the job on a silver platter, while Shedeur had to scratch and claw just to get on the field. And performance, that didn't seem to matter either. When Gabriel stumbled out of the gate, missing reads, taking sacks, failing to energize the offense, Stfansky doubled down. He continued backing his guy, offering recycled excuses and vague promises. Gabriel, despite the struggles, kept the spot. Meanwhile, when Shedeur finally did get snaps late in games, fans noticed. There was a different energy, a different rhythm, and a different result. It made fans start to ask the one question Browns brass wasn't prepared to answer. If Shedeur Sanders looked like the better quarterback, why wasn't he starting? That question became the spark that led to this whole debacle. Because just as fans and reporters began pushing back against Dillon Gabriel's undeserved role, everything changed. A TikTok would soon hit millions of views, revealing what insiders were afraid to say out loud. But before that blow-up, before the firestorm, and before the man vanished into total obscurity, the signs were already there. This wasn't about talent. It was about loyalty. And Kevin Stfansky had bet everything on a quarterback not everyone believed in except him. And somehow, it still gets stranger from here. What started as a weird quarterback controversy turned into a full-blown organizational nightmare the moment Dillon Gabriel's girlfriend opened her phone and hit record. Out of nowhere, a TikTok video dropped that flipped the entire conversation upside down. No polished PR statements, no filtered press leaks, just a raw, emotional post from someone who'd clearly had enough. She didn't hold back. Within seconds, she was exposing what she claimed was really going on behind the scenes in Cleveland: the dysfunction, the favoritism, the politics, the chaos. And she didn't speak like someone guessing. She spoke like someone who'd been watching it happen from the inside. She said Dillon had been mistreated, not just overlooked, but pressured, manipulated, and controlled. She claimed there were things the public didn't know about the internal decision-making at the Browns facility. Things that would make fans question who was actually running the team. And even more shockingly, she suggested Dillon was being kept in the starting role for reasons that had nothing to do with football. The video took off like wildfire. Within the first few hours, it was everywhere, reposted on Twitter, clipped on Instagram, dissected on YouTube. NFL bloggers picked it up immediately. Reddit threads exploded. ESPN debated it live. People started connecting dots they hadn't seen before. Suddenly, everything about the weird quarterback rotation started to feel strategic. Not in a good way, but in the worst possible way, almost like someone was trying to cover their tracks. As the views climbed into the millions, every sports analyst started asking the same question: what's really going on in Cleveland? And why is a quarterback's girlfriend the only one actually telling the truth? Fans weren't just angry, they were captivated. This wasn't just about football anymore. It was drama, it was betrayal. It was a front-row look at how badly a professional team could mishandle their future. And the stinger? Most of what she said lined up perfectly with what fans already suspected, that Dillon Gabriel was the coach's hand-picked favorite, pushed into a role he wasn't ready for, while the real talent, Shedeur Sanders, was left to rot on the sideline. But then, just as quickly as the video blew up, things got quiet. Too quiet. Dillon Gabriel went completely off the grid. No Instagram posts, no tweets, no interviews, no locker room footage, no sideline shots. Reporters looking for a statement, a comment, anything were met with dead silence. The Browns issued a vague injury update, claiming Gabriel was dealing with something, but no one could explain how or when it happened. He hadn't played, hadn't been hit, hadn't even been seen. It felt like he'd dropped off the face of the earth. And suddenly, the narrative flipped again. People weren't just curious anymore, they were suspicious. One minute, his girlfriend exposes the franchise. The next minute, Dillon's gone, just gone. No clarification, no context, just vanished. It didn't feel like an accident. It felt deliberate. And the Browns' total lack of answers only made it worse. Because now, what was once a questionable quarterback decision was starting to look like something much darker. A cover-up. A punishment. A silencing. And if that's what happened, people wanted to know who gave the order. At first, the Browns tried to brush it off. They quietly listed Dillon Gabriel on the injury report and hoped no one would ask too many questions. But it didn't take long for fans, and even reporters, to realize that something just wasn't adding up. How exactly did he get injured when he wasn't even playing? The last time Dillon Gabriel was seen on the field was weeks ago, warming the bench while Shedeur Sanders was out there torching opposing defenses. He wasn't taking hits. He wasn't in live situations. He wasn't even in the frame during broadcasts. So where did this injury come from? When did it happen? What kind of injury is it? And why has no one, not the team doctor, not the coach, not even Gabriel himself, provided a single concrete detail? It's not just vague. It's suspiciously vague. And here's where things start to look really strange. Up until that viral TikTok, Kevin Stfansky couldn't stop talking about Dillon Gabriel. He was constantly in the media defending his choice, explaining why Dillon was the starter, praising his work ethic and growth. Even during losses, Stfansky was ride or die for his guy. But the moment things exploded online and the girlfriend embarrassed the organization, total silence. Stfansky shut it down. Not one word about Dillon since. It's like Dillon Gabriel went from being the franchise quarterback to a ghost overnight. No updates, no status checks, no presence at practice, no locker room sound bites, absolutely nothing. And for a league that thrives on media coverage and constant updates, this blackout felt like more than a simple injury sideline. It felt like someone pressed mute hard. And when you line up the timeline, that's when it really starts to get uncomfortable. Dillon's girlfriend posts a viral tirade that paints the Browns as a dysfunctional, mismanaged mess. Days later, Dillon disappears. He's suddenly hurt, and no media is allowed to speak to him. Kevin Stfansky, who'd fought tooth and nail to defend Dillon, abandons him completely. The same coach that built an entire offensive strategy around him was now pretending he didn't exist. It wasn't just a benching. It was a blackout, a full-on shutdown. That's not normal. Even sideline players get interview time. They're seen encouraging teammates, standing on the sidelines, engaging with the team. But Dillon, he was nowhere, and nobody in the organization would explain why. To most fans, especially after the social media fallout, it felt like more than bad luck. It felt like damage control, executed at the top level, quietly, quickly, and without leaving a paper trail. The kind of disappearing act that only happens when someone in the building decides you've become a liability. And if you're wondering who has the power to make a player vanish that suddenly, there's only one name that comes to mind. Because this wasn't just a coach's decision. This didn't feel like standard injury management. This felt like a message sent from someone much higher up. Someone who wanted the noise gone, the distractions silenced. And that's when people started asking, where's Jimmy Haslam in all of this? Because if anyone had a reason to shut things down before they got worse, it was him. Even before Dillon Gabriel disappeared, before the social media meltdown and the media blackout, people inside the Browns facility were already talking. And what they were saying was loud, even if it wasn't on the record. Dillon wasn't just the starter. He was Stfansky's guy. That one phrase kept popping up. Stfansky's guy. Not the organization's pick. Not the front office's future. No, this was personal. This was about a coach tying his entire system to one quarterback, regardless of what the film said, regardless of what teammates thought, and regardless of whether it was actually working. And that's where the real problem began. Multiple reports, and even former Browns players, have quietly confirmed what many fans suspected. Dillon Gabriel's anointment as the starter wasn't based purely on merit. It was loyalty. Stubborn, unshakable, career-risking loyalty from Kevin Stfansky to a player he believed in but who just couldn't deliver. This wasn't just a strategic misstep. It was obvious. Gabriel struggled from the jump against NFL-level defenses, missing open throws, folding under pressure, reading plays a beat too slow. Meanwhile, a more dynamic, more polished quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, watched from the sideline like a forgotten prospect. Even worse, Shedeur was treated like a third-string practice arm despite being the more complete player. He wasn't just overlooked, he was intentionally benched, and the locker room noticed. Behind the scenes, the divide started to grow. Players saw who was getting protected, who was being favored, who got the public praise and who got silence. And in a sport like football, where locker room trust matters, nothing fractures confidence faster than blatant favoritism. You heard glimpses of it in interviews, even if no one said it outright. Former Browns players pulled punches, but the message was clear. Dillon was a project Stfansky bet everything on, a bet that didn't just fail, it backfired. One former player said it bluntly, Dillon was Stfansky's guy. We all knew it. That sentence alone says it all. Because if the starting QB was only there thanks to the coach's personal investment, then what does that say about the rest of the team culture? About the standards for performance? About the reality of earning your spot? And here's where it gets worse. Once Shedeur did finally step in and take over, the difference was immediate. The offense started clicking, the team played with more energy, and the spark that had been missing all season returned. It made the earlier decision to sit him look even more disrespectful and more deliberate. Every snap Shedeur played made one thing clearer. This controversy didn't need to happen. The Browns had their quarterback the whole time. He'd just been ignored, which only fueled further frustration within the team and the fanbase. This wasn't an accident. This was arrogance. A head coach making decisions based on who he liked, not who gave the team the best chance to win. And when Dillon Gabriel's girlfriend exposed all of this to the public, it didn't create the controversy, it confirmed it. Still, what shocked everyone was Stfansky's silence. It was how fast he turned his back. The same coach who went out of his way to protect Dillon Gabriel, even when the performances didn't justify it, completely ghosted him the moment things went south. No public defense, no clarification, no support. Dillon went from being the centerpiece to the scapegoat, and his so-called champion, nowhere to be found. It wasn't just bad leadership. It was a total collapse of trust, not only with the fans, but with the very players Stfansky was supposed to lead. And that collapse was just getting started. While the drama played out on the field and online, another battle was brewing behind the scenes, one just as critical as what was happening inside the Browns' locker room. the narrative war, and at the center of it, Mary Kay Kitt, the longtime Browns media insider. Because while national outlets like ESPN and NFL Network were starting to pull back the curtain and call out the team's blatant dysfunction, the local media, particularly Mary Kay, was singing a much different tune. A softer tune. One that sounded a lot like damage control. Instead of holding Kevin Stfansky accountable for weeks of questionable decisions, Mary Kay leapt to his defense. She didn't just offer explanations, she ran with excuses. She claimed the coach had never really had a fair shot, that he wasn't working with a real quarterback, that the chaos around the QB room wasn't a failure on his part, but something way outside his control. Which is laughable when you consider he was the one who pushed Dillon Gabriel into the starting role. He was the one handing out first-team reps like party favors. He was the one ignoring Shedeur Sanders, who had clearly earned a shot. But none of that made it into Mary Kay's argument. Instead, her commentary made it sound like Stfansky was the victim in this, and fans weren't buying it. It wasn't subtle. It was obvious. Anytime criticism started building momentum, Mary Kay was right there to shift the blame, redirect the heat, and present Stfansky like someone just trying his best in a bad situation. Even when the evidence was mounting against the coach, even when his own quarterback had vanished under mysterious circumstances, she stayed planted in her position, unflinching, unquestioning. It wasn't journalism anymore. It was PR. And things got heated when she appeared on the ultimate Cleveland Browns show, launching into a full-blown defense that left social media stunned. She claimed the team was finally playing hard because of Stfansky's leadership, not because Shedeur Sanders had turned the offense around. She said the team still believed in the coach, that he just hadn't had the tools this season to succeed. That maybe we shouldn't blame him at all. The mental gymnastics were next level. Because if you actually watched the games, if you looked at the data, the change in energy since Shedeur took over, the clear difference in command at the quarterback position, it was undeniable who had made the team better. It wasn't the coach. It was the player Kevin Stfansky fought for weeks to keep on the bench. Mary Kay wasn't just defending bad football decisions. She was rewriting history in real time. And it raised a deeper question: why? Why would someone so plugged into the organization, with years of access and information, go this far to protect a coach who was clearly losing the locker room and possibly his job? Fans started speculating about loyalty, access, relationships, about whether Mary Kay had grown too close to her sources to actually cover them fairly. Because every time Stfansky faced heat, there she was, standing in front of it like a human shield. And people noticed. The backlash online was brutal. Posts questioning her credibility, threads accusing her of spinning narratives, video montages showing her defending Stfansky over and over, no matter how bad things got. And the real kicker, when other Browns media members had the chance to push back on her arguments, they didn't. They stayed silent. They let her dominate segments. They nodded along. Occasionally, one would raise a gentle counterpoint before backing off entirely. No real challenges, no accountability. Just a quiet, passive acceptance of the story she was selling. And in doing so, local media failed the one group they were supposed to represent, the fans. Because while Mary Kay was telling them everything was fine, that the chaos was overblown, that the coach still had control, people watching at home could feel the truth. They knew this team had unraveled. They knew this wasn't just bad coaching, it was systemic favoritism, handled terribly, and then hidden as best as the franchise could manage. And if local journalists weren't going to ask the hard questions, fans would find answers elsewhere. Because this story wasn't just about a coach or a quarterback anymore. It was about how deep the cracks in the Browns' foundation really go, and how many people were working overtime to keep the public from seeing them. What's been just as telling as the silence from the Browns is the silence from Dillon Gabriel himself. Since his girlfriend's viral video put the Browns organization in the national spotlight, Dillon hasn't done a single interview. No tweet, no statement, no post-game locker room quote, no sideline expression caught by cameras, nothing. He's completely vanished from the public conversation, almost like an actor written out of a script mid-season with zero explanation. And the NFL doesn't work like that. Even injured quarterbacks usually stay visible. They wear team gear on the sidelines during games. They support teammates in practice. They answer questions from media, even if it's just to say, "I'm rehabbing and staying ready." But Dillon Gabriel, it's like he never existed, which makes the contrast with Shedeur Sanders even more jarring, because when Shedeur was the backup, the media wouldn't leave him alone. Every week he was asked about his mentality, his preparation, his role. There was pressure on him from the moment he arrived, as if he had to prove himself just to justify his last name. Reporters questioned his maturity. Analysts speculated about his attitude. Every camera in the building seemed to find a way to push the idea that maybe he wasn't ready. But through all of it, Shedeur stayed composed. He showed up, answered every question, said all the right things. He carried himself like a professional long before he got his shot on the field. His sister even had to step in on social media to defend him from the noise. That was the level of scrutiny he faced. He was under the microscope every single day. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel, who was handed the starting job, is now being protected like a high-profile witness. No questions, no accountability, no pressure, just a closed curtain and a vague injury. And for fans paying attention, that silence speaks louder than any statement ever could. Because it's not just about a quarterback being unavailable. It's about why he's been removed from view. And when you connect the timeline, girlfriend speaks out, media turns hostile, team goes silent, the picture starts to come into focus. This wasn't a normal injury situation. This was damage control. Protect the coach, shield the narrative, hide the player. And it worked for a moment. Until fans started asking, where did Dillon go? Why hasn't anyone seen him? Why is no one demanding answers? Because let's be clear, if Shedeur Sanders had vanished at the height of controversy, the flood of speculation would have been relentless. People would have questioned his character, his work ethic. They would have spun narratives about off-field distractions or whether he could handle pressure. But with Dillon, he gets the quiet treatment. The benefit of the doubt, total protective coverage. It's a double standard, plain and simple. Shedeur was dragged under a microscope when he was doing nothing wrong. Dillon disappears in the middle of public criticism, and the media, especially locally, has said almost nothing. All while the team continues to pretend his absence is just a matter of injury management. But nobody's convinced, because this story stopped being about football weeks ago. Now, it's about perception, narrative control. The Browns are hoping that if they keep Dillon off camera long enough, the distraction will fade. The TikTok will get buried. The public will move on. But it's not happening. The silence is too loud, and the contrast too obvious to ignore. By this point in the season, it had become painfully clear something bigger was going on behind closed doors in the Browns organization. And for more and more fans who have been connecting the dots, one name keeps coming up again and again: Jimmy Haslam. Because make no mistake, disappearing a player doesn't happen without serious authority. Silencing a quarterback, dodging the press, coordinating a total media blackout. That's not something a head coach does on his own. That's not just Kevin Stfansky making a personnel decision. That's the kind of move that comes from the top. And Haslam has a history of involvement, the kind of owner who doesn't just oversee the business side, but likes to play an active part in football decisions. He's been known to insert himself into coaching hires, roster discussions, and PR strategies. So when the Dillon Gabriel situation blew up on social media, and when his own player's girlfriend started calling the team out to millions online, you better believe it caught Haslam's attention. From a PR standpoint, it was a ticking time bomb. A starting quarterback's relationship peeling the curtain back on dysfunction in the locker room, on TikTok, no less. That spills outside the sports world. That's not just a football problem, that's a brand crisis. And for a high-control owner like Haslam, that kind of public embarrassment doesn't go unanswered. So when Dillon Gabriel vanished, almost overnight speculation spread fast, not just because of the timing, but because of the intensity of it. Dillon completely silenced, the team tightly controlling all information about his status. No media access, no locker room presence. No leaks, not even the usual "he's close to returning" PR fluff teams put out to stop questions from piling up. Just complete shutdown. That's not just a coincidence. That's execution. Strategic, swift, absolute. And when you look at it from Haslam's perspective, it starts to make uncomfortable sense. He's already battling heat over his team's record, dealing with fan frustration, questions about firing the head coach, and now he's got a player's girlfriend dragging the organization through the mud and going viral doing it. He doesn't need more cameras in the locker room. He doesn't want Dillon facing reporters. He definitely doesn't want Dillon responding on social media and creating another viral cycle. So what's the simplest fix? Shut it all down. Get Dillon out of the spotlight. Take the bullets away from the coach. Make the problem disappear, at least until things cool off. Cue the mystery injury. Cue the blackout. Cue the silence. It was damage control, the kind that only someone with Haslam's level of control could pull off. And the proof? Look at what didn't happen. No attempt at clarification. No effort to squash the rumors or reassure the public. No player sightings to calm speculation. Nothing to ease concerns about what Dillon's actual condition really is. Just silence and a head coach who suddenly stopped defending a player he once went to war for. That silence wasn't an accident. It was carefully calculated. And when an owner steps in to override normal team operations, it usually means one thing: trust has been broken. Confidence in the coach starts to crack. Control starts shifting. And leadership starts watching their own back instead of fixing the problem in front of them. That's where the Browns are now. Because you know what owners don't do? Micromanage functioning systems. If everything's under control, Haslam stays upstairs, focused on the big picture. But when the league's laughing at your quarterback drama, your media ally is getting flamed on social media, and a TikTok is narrating your franchise's failure to millions of people, owners start getting directly involved. And once that happens, there's usually no going back. Now that the Browns' carefully constructed narrative is falling apart, reality is starting to hit. And for Kevin Stfansky and Dillon Gabriel, the writing might already be on the wall. Let's start with the coach. From the outside, Stfansky still looks like a guy in charge. He runs practices. He gives vague answers at press conferences. He stiff-arms questions about quarterback decisions like they're beneath him. But behind the scenes, his grip on this team is slipping, and fast. According to multiple reports from NFL insiders, including ESPN's Adam Schefter, Stfansky could be coaching his final games in Cleveland. That's despite having 2 Coach of the Year awards on his resume. Why? Because this mess isn't just about results. It's about decisions, repeated, avoidable, ego-driven decisions that have compromised the team's culture and wasted valuable time. For weeks, Stfansky backed the wrong quarterback. He ignored teammates, fans, analysts, even internal pushback to prop up his hand-picked project. And once that project collapsed, not only did he offer no explanation, he disappeared with him. No accountability, no apology, just silence. That tells ownership one thing: this guy can't weather pressure. And worse, he created his own storm. And if Stfansky goes, Dillon Gabriel won't be far behind, because Dillon wasn't the front office's guy. He wasn't ownership's pick. He wasn't a consensus QB1 in scouting reports. He was a coach's bet, plain and simple. A personal favorite molded into a starter, not because he earned it, but because someone wanted him to work. And once that someone is gone, the last thread connecting Dillon Gabriel to the team snaps instantly. No incoming head coach is going to stake his future on a quarterback who lost his job in less than a month, who caused a PR firestorm thanks to his girlfriend's social media outbursts, and who mysteriously disappeared from public view in the middle of a season without ever clearing the air. If Dillon was Stfansky's chosen pet project, would he even be on the roster right now? Probably not. And that's the larger issue. Gabriel's career may have just been derailed, not only by how he played, but by how the entire thing was handled. The Browns put him in a situation he wasn't ready for, didn't earn, and couldn't control. He was set up as the starter while a more talented quarterback sat behind him, forced to bite his tongue and wait. The media was never on his side. The fans never believed he was the guy. And now, even the coach who once defended him won't speak his name. That's career-killing pressure. And he wasn't equipped for it. There's a difference between developing a quarterback and forcing one into the spotlight for political reasons. Dillon didn't just get overwhelmed by NFL speed. He got caught in a storm of favoritism, bad press, toxic silence, and locker room tension, all without the tools to survive it. And now, what team is going to take that risk? What coach is going to look past all of it? The girlfriend's viral breakdown, the sudden vanishing act, the total lack of leadership from Gabriel, and the refusal to own any part of what went wrong and say, yeah, let's bring him in. Because the truth is cruel but simple. Once a quarterback becomes a distraction, he stops being an asset. And right now, Dillon Gabriel isn't a developmental piece. He's a headline, a question mark. A name attached to one of the most bizarre and embarrassing team controversies in recent NFL memory. And just like that, his future, along with Kevin Stfansky's, may have already been sealed. All that's left now is the fallout. For Dillon Gabriel, this isn't just a setback. It might be the end of the road before his career even really got started. He came into the league as an underdog. A likable, gritty college QB who showed flashes of brilliance at Oklahoma but didn't top many draft boards. He wasn't seen as a future franchise player, more of a developmental guy with potential if put into the right system, under the right coach, with the right support. Instead, he was thrown straight into the fire. He was handed the keys to a broken offense, forced into a leadership spot he hadn't earned, and placed under the protection of a head coach more invested in proving himself right than building a quarterback the right way. And in doing so, the Browns didn't just damage Dillon's development, they damaged his reputation. Once the viral drama hit the internet and the mysterious disappearance followed, he stopped being a quarterback prospect and became a story. And not the kind of story teams want in their locker room. Now, no GM or head coach looking to build a stable, focused environment is going to invite that storm in. More talented free agents will be available. More polished rookies will hit the draft board. Dillon's resume doesn't stand out on paper, and now he's bringing major off-field noise. His girlfriend is trending for exposing team secrets. His head coach has abandoned him. And he's being discussed more for what he's not saying than for anything he's actually done on the field. What team is going to fight through all of that, just to see if maybe there's something still worth salvaging? And if that sounds brutal, that's the NFL. In a league built on value, availability, and perception, Dillon Gabriel's value is plummeting. He's unavailable. And the perception surrounding him, fair or not, is toxic. He's at risk of becoming one of those sad cautionary tales. The remember him type players people bring up when talking about what happens when a talented kid walks into the wrong locker room at the wrong time, backed by the wrong people. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders is writing a completely different story. He was doubted from the beginning, criticized before taking a single NFL snap, and despite being the better prospect, he was buried on the depth chart without cause, treated like an outsider. Given second-string scraps while a less talented player got headlines and excuses. But instead of sulking, Shedeur stayed silent, professional, controlled. And when the chaos reached a breaking point and he finally got his shot, he delivered. Drive after drive, win after win. Suddenly, the offense had rhythm, chemistry, fire. The Browns went from lifeless to dangerous just by putting the right quarterback under center. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a correction. And now, Shedeur's performance hasn't just flipped the narrative, it's exposed it. Every yard he gains is a reminder of how badly the Browns misjudged this situation. Every touchdown is a quiet middle finger to the people who tried to bury him. Every win turns up the heat on those who spent the first half of the season pretending he wasn't ready. This is what makes the Dillon Gabriel saga hurt even more, because the answers were right there the whole time. The Browns had their guy. They just didn't trust him. They had a quarterback who could lead this team, and instead, they backed someone who couldn't carry the weight. And now, one is thriving, the other is vanishing. This wasn't just a coaching disaster. It was a leadership failure. A failure to see talent, to manage egos, and to know when loyalty turns into liability. With each game, Shedeur Sanders is earning his place as the new face of the franchise. And with each day of silence, Dillon Gabriel fades further out of the picture, not just in Cleveland, but across the league. Because in the NFL, opportunity comes fast, and so does the fall when you wrongly take someone else's shot. And when the next head coach walks into that facility, he won't be thinking about salvaging Stfansky's failed projects. He'll be building around the player who was never the problem. The story of Dillon Gabriel's disappearance might seem like a typical NFL drama on the surface. A failed draft pick, a bad coaching decision, another quarterback controversy in a franchise known for them. But it's so much deeper than that. Because if you strip away the headlines, the speculation, the viral TikToks, this wasn't just about football. It was about how football decisions get made, who gets protected, who gets punished, and how easily an organization can spiral when no one's willing to tell the truth. From the very beginning, this quarterback room was built on dysfunction. There was no real competition, no merit-based ladder, just favoritism disguised as strategy and politics disguised as leadership. Dillon Gabriel was placed in a position he didn't earn, and Shedeur Sanders was buried for reasons that had nothing to do with talent. Everything that unfolded after, the drama, the silence, the media spin, wasn't the result of bad luck. It was the result of bad leadership. And once the truth leaked, not through a journalist, but through a girlfriend's TikTok, the entire house of cards collapsed. The Browns responded not with answers, but with silence. They didn't clarify. They didn't apologize. They didn't correct the record. They just made Dillon Gabriel disappear and hoped it would all blow over. But that silence ended up saying more than any press conference ever could. It revealed the internal panic, the scramble to control perception, the desperation to protect reputations before taking responsibility. And it laid bare the cold reality of this business, that once a player becomes a liability, the same people who once believed in him will send him into the shadows like he never existed. At the same time, the treatment of Shedeur Sanders exposed an ugly double standard. He was scrutinized, questioned, pressured, and sidelined. Yet when he finally got the chance that should have been his from day one, he delivered. Calm, sharp, focused. Everything you want in a franchise quarterback, sitting quietly in the wings while the team burned itself from the inside. And maybe that's the most frustrating part, because this never had to happen. The Browns had the right quarterback all along, but they chose dysfunction. They chose ego. They chose optics over substance and wasted half a season protecting the wrong guy for all the wrong reasons. Now they're left with the consequences. A head coach whose time is almost up. A quarterback who might never play another snap in the league. And a fan base that's tired of watching this team sabotage itself every year with the same mistakes, just dressed in different jerseys. Dillon Gabriel's disappearance won't be easily forgotten, because it wasn't just about injury or privacy. It felt coordinated. Intentional, like someone made the call to erase a storyline the franchise couldn't control. Whether it was Jimmy Haslam pulling the strings or Stfansky cutting ties to cover his own failures, one thing is for sure, Dillon wasn't just benched. He was shut down like a PR fire too risky to leave burning. And while he fades further into silence, Shedeur rises not just because of talent, but because of everything he had to overcome. The politics, the pressure, the blatant disrespect. And still, he waited patiently. He let his game do the talking. And now, he's the future. The Browns say they want to build a winning culture. If that's true, they need to learn from this. Stop playing favorites. Stop spinning narratives. And stop silencing the messes you create. Because in today's NFL, nothing stays hidden forever. And the next time a quarterback mysteriously goes missing, fans will remember this story. They'll remember what was said, what wasn't. And they'll remember how the Cleveland Browns tried to erase a scandal, one injury report at a time.